Madama Butterfly is one of the most beautiful roles ever written for the soprano tessitura and one of the most difficult as well. It faces so many challenges, vocally speaking, of course, on the interpretation side as well, and having been written by the great Maestro Puccini, it's full of so many memorable moments throughout the whole opera.
Siete l'uomo migliore del mondo, Amico, cercherete quel bel fior di fanciulla. Lo dice proprio così? Sì, così dice, ma sia ad ogni momento. Faccio, io nulla. Da quel tempo felice, 3 anni son passati. Anche lui ha contatti. E forse Butterfly non mi rammenta più.
So, in that letter, those first words that Sharpless has read in the letter that Pinkerton has sent, referring to Chocho-san, Madama Butterfly herself, and he says, a quel tempo felice 3 anni son passati e forse Butterfly non mi rammenta più. 3 years have already passed of those very happy days, and probably and maybe Butterfly has already forgotten me. But those words impact in such a way Chocho-san that it one feels like it has already with already a broken heart, it has made even more harm to the poor heart of Butterfly, because she uses somehow part of the words and says, "Non mi rammenta più." Suzuki dillo tu, non mi rammenta più. How can he dare to say that I may have forgotten him when I have spent each and every day of the past 3 years with his memory day after day, hour after hour with me? I am not willing to forget him. I am longing for his return, as we have learned in the very well-known aria Un bel di vedremo. But today's entry is not about how beautiful or how much, or we're talking about how much Chocho-san is suffering. We are talking about the immense difficulties behind this role that, of course, every soprano would like to sing, except for maybe the Un bel di vedremo, which is, if not impossible, it's much more at the reach of most sopranos, and maybe the very long duet of the first act, along with Pinkerton. Those are the only easy parts that a Butterfly is going to be singing, because, in a way, I was thinking just before preparing today's entry that Maestro Puccini has these very long legato phrases. As we have explained, Katya and I before, those legato phrases, not only for words but complete phrases, are, in a way, if you allow me the comparison, pretty much what one expects from bel canto. Very continuous, homogeneous sound throughout whole passages. But Maestro Puccini adds to that to that beauty and homogeneity of the voice required, he adds a heavy orchestration and a very complicated area, continuously singing in a very complicated area for the soprano. That's why it is advised, one, either that you have been singing for already 10 or 15 years before attempting to sing the complete role of butterfly, or that it is actually a spinto soprano who goes for the role, because a purely lyrical voice will not be able to get away with it. You may say, ah, but Renata Scotto sang it, ah, but Mirella Freni, ah, but Caballé. Yeah, there are several lyrical sopranos who have gone for the role, but pay attention to what type of voices we are referring to. We are referring to the exceptions. Most sopranos, and moreover lyrical sopranos, would have a very hard time trying to sing the complete role. It has there is already a number of sopranos who have damaged, who have hurt her voices for going for this role too early. And singing a role that is too heavy for your voice is not noticeable the very next day. One will notice if soprano singing it on a Sunday, she may not have lost her voice by Tuesday. But weeks or months later, after this continuous attempt of going for a role that is really not your role, is when one realizes that she has gone for a role that certainly was not supposed to be sung by her. Of course, as many times before, I am not going to be providing names of the sopranos who have damaged her voice, and one of the roles they attempted is Madama Butterfly. Even though they were sopranos, that I like the quality and the sound of their voices. Unfortunately, they chose to go for the role way too early. But let's make a very quick review on what the challenges are, or what is the continuity or the flow of the action that Butterfly is going to be singing. For the first act and for the first part of the first act, Butterfly will not be on stage. She will be referred to by either Pinkerton or Sharpless, but she will not be on stage. On the second part of the first act, when the wedding is about to happen, is when she enters. There are no difficult parts for that. As I was just saying, the first act is pretty much manageable by any lyrical soprano. Uh, the duet with Pinkerton is not that challenging vocally, not so demanding in terms of volume and tiredness of the voice, but it is demanding because the duet, if you start from Viene la sera, it's going to be a super long duet that ends with a high note. So tiring it certainly is, but it's still doable and manageable. But as soon as the second act has started, and right after with having a short conversation with Suzuki, she starts the Un bel di vedremo. And right after the Un bel di vedremo, there's going to be this scene with when Sharpless arrives and when she is then presented another guy, another Japanese guy who is willing to marry her because now it is said that she has been basically abandoned, no matter how much she hopes she has, but she continues singing on that scene. And then that once that man leaves, she is left alone with Sharpless, and then we have the scene that starts with Incominciate, the scene that we just watched that I would like to share with you. It is in the voice of the Mexican soprano Irma Gonzalez, a very well-known soprano in Mexico who made a career of around 4 decades, maybe one or not maybe. I'm pretty certain that the most admired Mexican soprano. She had a heart of gold, and she was the teacher of so many, many singers that made an interesting career, most of them in Europe. So, Maestra Irma Gonzalez is in the heart of all Mexicans. And in fact, this is her final appearance on stage. This Madama Butterfly is her farewell, in fact, and this is the moment that we are sharing. So this scene from Madama Butterfly is particularly touching. She knows that this is going to be the last time she's going to be on stage, and she made of Madama Butterfly her key role throughout this her four decades of career. Still, of course, the voice is not now in the best conditions, but she can show us how much she loved this role. And for being close to her 60s, she is still able to manage the immense difficulties of Madame Butterfly. This video I wanted to share also. There is part of several. It's one of the several parts that make the whole composition of the video. We have to the quality of the sound, the quality of the video is not very good, but we have to keep in mind that it was, we can call it like that, rescued by Manuel Irizar, who happened to be the TV producer of really many recordings at the Palacio de Bellas Artes in the decades of the 80s and 90s mainly. So he had the opportunity of meeting many of the most important singers of that time, and he kept a copy of those TV transmissions on VHS or beta. I'm not sure the format, but that's why there are many videos that are cut and why the quality is not very good. But I think that as a testimonial of those days, it is very worth watching. Well, after having made that pause to refer you to the recording where we are watching today, I'm moving on with the scene because after the incoming chat and after having shared how much it breaks her heart that Pinkerton thinks she has already forgotten him. Then we move by far for the most difficult part of the opera for the soprano. We are referring to the part that starts when she says que la tu amama, and que la tu amama, it is right after she has introduced her son, the son of Pinkerton herself. She has introduced their son to Sharpless and has given the name of Sadness now that the father is away, but will be renamed Happiness once he comes back, still not knowing if he will ever come back. So, but that scene is, besides being very, very long, it's very, very demanding because the orchestration is going to be very heavy. The level of emotionality on Butterfly is going to be stratospheric as well. And she's going to be touching a series of notes continuously that are very difficult because they will be close to the center and the beginning of the upper register of the soprano voice when she sings Marta, Marta, ma più danzar, sorry, ma più danzar, volevi la mia vita più tarata, morta, morta. That whole passage is so demanding for the voice of the soprano that many sopranos choose to sing it with a much lower volume in order to avoid that their voice cracks. So difficult is that passage. But it hasn't ended there because after that duet with Sharpless, when he leaves and says that he will let Pinkerton know that he in fact has a son, he says that he's going to be sharing that with Pinkerton and leaves, but then uh, Suzuki and Butterfly are left alone for a very short scene, but still very demanding in terms of emotionality and in a way for the voice as well, that starts with Una nave di guerra bianca, bianca, il vestito americano delle stelle. That part that starts there, that condenses in very few, uh, in a very short amount of time, that condenses so much emotion. Just imagine that you have been waiting for 3 years, and then suddenly the sign that you have been waiting for arrives. The sign of the return of the man you love. That's what happens there. Tutti han mentito, sol io lo sapeva, sol io che l'amo. Vedi ogni minuto il tuo dubbio è giunto, proprio nel punto che ognuno diceva, piange e dispera. That part that It is difficult because the soprano needs to transmit lots of emotion in her voice with a very well quality of the voice. Still she cannot allow her voice crack because of a technique. She can maybe lose make it loose or seem vulnerable, but in the pursuit of the emotion. And Sol io che l'amo goes for a high note, vedi ci minuto il tuo dubbio giunto giunto. Then she's left still on the stage. I mean, she hasn't stopped being on the stage, singing and singing and singing, starting from the scene just before the Un bel di vedremo and up to this moment, because now she's going to have the duet that continues with Suzuki, the duet because they want to make the house to look beautiful just before we have a very small pause for our Madama, our Chocho-san to rest, that it's going to be, of course, Il Coro a Boca Chiusa, another one of the most beautiful creations by Maestro Puccini. And if you know the plot of the opera, then you know that right after that very beautiful scene, after Il Coro a Boca Chiusa, we are going to have the arrival of Pinkerton and her American wife. Chocho-san will not be close when they arrive. They will meet with Suzuki, but Chocho-san will join them soon after, just to learn that the woman there is his wife. Of course, this ends up breaking her heart. And keep in mind that even if you don't see an aria happening at that moment, think of the emotion that in a way is draining the energy of the soprano, because she really has to commit to the role to make it believable. So it is draining the soprano emotionality so that we can be touched by Madama Butterfly. And when she breaks her heart, and it breaks her heart, and this time it refers, or butterfly, instead of being referred as a butterfly, there is a very horrible expression that refers that she's trapped like a fly. Um, After that, she's going to be asked to deliver her son to Pinkerton and his American wife, which of course will end up breaking Chocho-san. And then we will have, as if it hadn't been enough, this singing. Maestro Puccini decided to give Chocho-san a final challenge, being the aria that we know as the death scene of Chocho-san, tu piccoli Dio, amore, amore mio. That's how it actually starts, and that is absolutely demanding, not only because the soprano has been sung for so long already, but also because, again, it's going to have the same combination of sounds, of notes that are required in the limit of the center of the voice and the start of the higher register of the soprano, and it has to be sung with all the stamina, because otherwise it is not going to be, one thing, it's not going to be passing the orchestra, and two, the Chocho-san voice will not be believable. One here has to take into account that even though it is supposed to be composed for a very young person because Chocho-san starts 15 years old when the opera starts, and by this moment, when she's about to die, she's supposed to be 18 years. So 18 years and to be expected to be sung, to be singing with that power, it's just not possible. But the truth is that Maestro Puccini always composed from that perspective. I think you may recall when Katia and I shared with you that singing Puccini is 90% out of 100 times very difficult. All Puccinian roles are very heavy. And this Madama Butterfly is a perfect example of what it is. But going back to her final aria, people are aware that there are this series of high notes. This guarda bene amar. This series of notes that for a tenor might be much easier to sing can be much more difficult to sing for the tessitura of a soprano. But I insist, keep in mind that she has been singing already for way too much time. She's already tired physically, emotionally, and of course, vocally. That's why we appreciate when there are these extraordinary sopranos singing the one of the most beautiful roles ever written for the soprano voice. Of course, you may recall that it starts with the phrase con onor muore chi non può osservar vita con onore.